the marketing behind the film is significantly more important than the film itself. And then I also have a little kind of like a spin-off of this, is that anybody who says I make movies for me and not for other people is bullshitting themselves.
So is that two takes then, sort of? So I feel like those are kind of...
The people who often say that I make movies for me but not for other people, they are often the type of people to put zero thought into marketing, I would say.
So they're like related, but...
Yeah, they're related, but I guess you can, if you agree with one and disagree with the other, we can address those separately.
Because that's what I'll say is I actually agree that with the whole like I make this film for me statement. But I do disagree. I think with the idea of marketing being more valuable than, again, real answer is but if I'm
with this one, it's kind of I kind of cheated. It's kind of two takes, so you can split it up if you want.
Yeah. Well, no. So I'll split them up. Then So for the idea that marketing is more important than a film, the difficult thing is that it does really depend. But for the sake of this, I'm going to say I disagree, because I think that what you learn from a film, I don't know. I think that putting resources, especially on an indie level, maybe not especially on an indie, well, sure, especially on an indie level, I think it's good to put all the resources you can, like everything you can, into the film and just make it as good as possible. And in a way, that can kind of be its own marketing. I think that you're maybe not going to get as many looks or as many blah blah blahs, but I think that if you're starting out, I don't even think that really matters. I don't think for your first short film or your first couple short films should be viral. I think that would be... It'd
be bad if they were.
It would be not... like, just think about, like, our first couple, like, our first, like, three. Like, that would suck. And I think that that's kind of, like, I guess the way I look at it is that, I think that just making the film as good as possible will always be the best, because, again, I think that it is an art form. Sure, it's also a commercial thing, too. But short films, you're not really making for commercial, commerciality, commercial viability, and for like monetary incentives 99.9% of the time. So I think that we should treat it more as just like an actual passion art piece most of the time, but that's my opinion.
Okay, so putting marketing efforts into your first couple short films, sure, that's not the best idea. Marketing nowadays, if you put effort into it, it's free. We just talked with Luca Pizzoleo. I'm sorry, Luca Pizzoleo. He talked about how he got 40 million views worth of free advertising for his short film RCD on TikTok. I think that is something that you have to go into pre-production with. Okay, this is how I'm going to market this film in mind. Of course, he used one of the main actors, Stephen Ogg. He used his name gratuitously in the marketing promotion, and of course, that's a very viable strategy. But he didn't sign Stephen Ogg just for the marketing purposes of his name. He signed him because he's a good actor. Blah 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 blah. The people, so making short films directly for commercial viability. No, that's correct. Short films will never get an ROI. I would be very surprised if there was a single short film ever that has actually gotten an ROI. However, short films are indirectly commercially viable. In the sense of you submit it to a festival and it does well, then you meet a producer or put it onto YouTube and a producer contacts you. We'll go the example I've used 10,000 times, Wesley Wang making his short film, Everything Everywhere All at Once. No, fuck. Nothing Except Everything.
Right. Similar titles.
Yeah. If that film wasn't as commercially viable as it was, I highly doubt Darren Aronofsky would have contacted him. And I honestly have no idea the marketing he actually did for that. I'm not sure if he did any direct marketing, but he did have like his 2 stars had a combined 2 million Instagram followers, and I'm sure that's marketing, that they did some amount of marketing for the film.
Yeah. Gave it that initial algorithmic push.
Yeah, something like that. So I don't honestly know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, I think that like my counter to that though would be like, how many Wesley Wangs are there? There's not that many.
Maybe because they haven't focused on marketing their stuff enough.
Maybe, but I think that I think the main thing is having a decent portfolio, and I think people like Wesley Wang are a minority in this aspect, and I think that I think that trying to be the next version of that is a bit of a fault, and I think that like is it we could this is another debate too, is like, is that luck, is that intentional? It can't be all luck, but it can't be all intentional either. There has to be some level of luck playing into it, but I don't think it's enough to say that it's like not his fault. I think it is his fault. I think he did that. I think he had a goal. Maybe the Aronofsky aspect is where it gets luck. It just happened to be Aronofsky. It could have been someone else though, that had a similar interest in the film. But so that probably is luck. But yeah, I mean, it getting successful and it getting attention was something that probably was most likely. And I'm sure if you could find a thing of him talking about it, it probably was something that he was thinking of before he even made it. And I think that when you are making these pieces of work, if someone wants to get, like, if that was the only thing he did, would someone be willing to give him that much money to make a feature adaptation?
Yeah, probably not.
Like, he has a portfolio and he has some decent work, and we could also talk about like the quality of the film. I haven't seen it, but I've heard some people criticize it for certain things, maybe being a little bit cliche and stuff like that. But again, like we talked about, I don't think that's necessarily a big deal a lot of the time. But yeah, I guess my counter would just be like, I do think having really solid qualities of work in your portfolio is a better selling point for yourself later down the road, for when you're going to stop making shorts and start making features.
Yeah, but I guess if we're talking about that commercial viability, what is the point of having a solid body of work if nobody ever sees anything you make or hears of you?
Well, I think that people are still going to see it. I think people are still, and I also, having a high quality film it's a very subjective thing. But I think usually usually high quality films perform better than low quality films at festivals, getting views, getting attention. And I think that if you build a reputation, even if it's small, of being this director who can consistently produce these things, I just think that naturally it will grow. And I think that it also just scales. Those things kind of scale together. So like if you put, 100% of your effort, 75% of your effort into the film and 25 into marketing, and you just keep getting more and more like higher budget shorts, I think that also just means that your marketing will scale. And I think that, eventually you'll hit the right thing. Sure. Also, like, again, most people that start making their first features don't usually work with like someone like Aronofsky. Sure. They tend to get it from like either couple smaller producers, or they just self-produce, which is often the most common thing for at least your your first feature. So I don't know, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my opinion mostly comes from two facts: of the fact that blockbusters and massive studio films, which obviously isn't necessarily the niche that we're talking about or speaking to, but those often have higher marketing budgets than production budgets, and also the fact that I have seen if any indie filmmakers actually making an effort to push their films on a marketing level. So that's kind of where that opinion comes from. And if maybe not significantly more important, maybe not even more important at all, maybe equally as important as the actual quality of the film, but I think that marketing is something that indie filmmakers do need to think about considerably more.
And talking about Luca too, real quick, like, I remember when we had Luke Ring, go watch it, on our podcast, we actually did mention Luca briefly. And I think what Luke mentioned, which is actually, when you think about it, is interesting. He said, what Luca Pizzoleo does for his films, it's genius. He markets them. And when you think about it, all he does is, like, what Luca actually is doing is not crazy for like for like the what you see in like higher up and mid range and productions and stuff like that. But when you consider that, like no one else is really doing that with their short films consistently like he is doing. And if you look up Luca Pizzoleo, you'll see his website, and his website like looks flawless. Like it's very sleek, very nice. But it shows his body of work, which again, he also he makes consistently good looking films with like really easy to under like not like easy, like very easy to get into stories because
Sure.
you know he knows what he wants to make and he has a really good vision, I think, all the way through. And obviously he does make his films commercially viable. Like everything has several thousand views on everything, and 2 million in the case of OCD.
Yeah.
So
And just talking about the aspect of luck for a second, like luck is simply preparation meeting opportunity. I'm sure you've heard that quote before. Luck is just being prepared for an opportunity that approaches you. And yeah, if you go crazy on your marketing campaign for your first ever short film, of course you're not prepared enough for that. But I do think filmmakers, when they get to a certain point in their careers or in their bodies of work, need to start taking marketing as seriously as making the film itself.
yeah, definitely.